Hello, and welcome to a Learn Conversation. My name is Silvija, and my guest today is Astri Hovem, Director of or CEO of the DNV Accelerator. Welcome, Liv.
Thank you very much, Silvija. Very nice to be here with you.
I'm really pleased to have you here. So I will say a few words about the series that this is a part of, and then we'll get into our conversation. So this conversation is a part of a series that Learn is doing with the Norwegian School of Economics, NHH, about digitalization and sustainability as new business models and new strategies. And we are actually structuring this as a 6-part series with projects from DNV, Den Norske Veritas, where I'm also on the board, but I'm super impressed by the company as a very innovative company in technology, but also an incredibly socially responsible company and a very sustainability-focused company. And I thought that there are 6 very good, very concrete cases of what sustainability and digitalization look like in practice in world-class leading examples. So the conversation with you, I'm also super excited about, because I know you from DNV as one of the most accomplished female P&L operational leaders of large divisions, now leading the most innovative part of the corporation. So DNV, with its 12,000 employees and operations in 100 countries across the world, also carries a 150-year-old tradition of innovation, especially in maritime sector, but has been very interesting as a knowledge transfer company that took this maritime experience and put it into oil and gas, energy systems, business assurance, and now health, food, and general safety. And 2 things I would really like to focus in our conversation, Liv. One is your time in as the CEO for the oil and gas division in DNV, which is a very important area of innovation for Norway in general as a country, because we are very much dependent on all the revenues that the oil sector is creating, oil and gas, maybe we should say now, is creating. At the same time, there is immense opportunity for improvements in efficiency and sustainability, and the necessity for knowledge transfer of all the excellent work that we are doing in that area to all the other sectors. So I'd like to understand with you how you have worked with the oil and gas as a business and innovation. And then we are going to talk about the group that you're leading now, which is the Accelerator, which is really a collection of all the really quite big bets that DNV is making on things like security, cybersecurity, health, food, and other services that need digital assurance. Sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds very, very good. I look forward to discussing with you, Silvija.
Very cool, very cool. So, Liv, we'll start actually with you. I always ask people, who are you, and what are your driving forces? And I have to start our conversation with congratulating you on the next what's going to happen in about an hour from now. So you have to tell our listeners about that.
Yeah, so I'm fortunate enough to get my first vaccine shot in an hour, and that's fantastic. I think we are so fortunate that we get that, and it actually allows me to start planning for the summer and the autumn. So yeah, super exciting. I'm very grateful for that.
So who's Liv? Tell us.
Who's Liv? That's always a question. I am I'm an engineer, and I'm a woman, mother of 3 adult, super fine human beings. Been married to my husband since we were college age. So that's more than a generation ago. We enjoy doing things together in the spare time, and we are Norwegian so we love going long distance skiing, running, biking, playing tennis. It's a lot about sports, but we also enjoy a rich social life, and I think I have a fantastic life, really, to be fortunate to live in a country such as Norway, working in a super exciting company such as DNV, having great people around me, and I really enjoy it. So I just hope it never goes over. But of course it will at some point.
So, Liv, I have to ask you two things. And the first one is going to be very impolite. And I'm sorry about that. I have to ask you about your age, because I remember the first time you told me your age, I was completely shocked.
I am 56. I'm 56.
I remember looking at you in the board meetings and thinking, how did this young lady get to these incredible top leadership positions in one of the most asset heavy but also commercially important areas of DNV. I thought you were 26, to be honest.
Oh no, that you're so kind to me. No, it's not that. But I must say I have been fortunate with the good genes, of course, but having had I think a life that has become very trendy now. I think that's kind of been my way of living in all my upbringing. My mother is a very realistic. She's a nurse, very into nutrition and how important, and also my father, how important it is to kind of balance the body and the brain. So always been active, not like super competition sport, but what is called yoga now, I have done that for my whole life, doing stretch exercises and these kind of simple strength exercises, a little bit every day is kind of the thing. And then, a little, and just enough food and just enough drink, and, try to be a little bit boring. Sounds very boring, so don't.
Yeah, I guess boring is the way, or at least balanced. So, Liv, the other question I have is, tell us a little bit about your international background, because you spent both quite a bit of your youth abroad, but also your grown-up life. You even though you were based in Norway, you were working with a very international setup.
Yeah, so I grew up actually in Italy as a young child. My father worked at the scientific research center in Italy at La Spezia. So we grew up there, and that's been a very important part of my life, because I think I was 8 years when I came to Norway and hardly spoke Norwegian. And my father has been based there also afterwards during my time at university. So it's been a place where we always come every summer and, have a good time together. So it's also become important for my husband and my family. And then I had a high school year in Texas, Austin, Texas. That was also part of growing up with my family. And then when I finished my master's at NTNU in Norway and worked for a couple of years in DNV, I felt I was a little bit too young to kind of start a very established life. So I decided to go and have some extra education. And then I traveled to California, to Berkeley, and had the second master's degree in naval architecture and offshore engineering. It was actually a start of a PhD, but I didn't do the thesis. I felt then that it was time to come back and start establishing a family. And of course, in my work in DNV, that's also parts of the reason I love working with DNV. It's so international. The maritime, I spent 15 years in the maritime business area. It's, very international, 15 years in oil and gas. And there I also at some point had the responsibility for the European region that was headquartered in Milano. So I was commuting more or less to Milano for 3 years. And then, of course, now when at the latest had the global role, it was a lot of traveling, Middle East, especially Asia, US. I really enjoy meeting people and understanding how to think and realizing how the world look different depending on where you see it from. So just by traveling and discussing and looking at your own country from a distance open up completely new perspectives. So very rewarding.
Liv, I have to ask you. So I grew up with 3 languages, Hungarian, Serbian, and quite a bit of English. And I noticed that I'm a different person depending on which language I speak. It's like, my whole chemistry changes. And, in some cases, I'm far more sentimental. In some cases, I'm simply far more familial. Do you think differently in Italian, Norwegian, English?
No, actually, I don't think so. I do. Of course, I'm able to articulate much more precisely in my mother tongue. And then in English better than, Italian was a language that I learned when I was a kid. So I kind of have this very basic vocabulary. It's like speaking with the kids. So it's very limiting, really. I don't think it changes too much my personality, actually. And like you can switch between English and Norwegian just in the middle of a sentence, depending who comes into the room. But maybe more actually where I am. So when I'm in Italy, I'm a different person, and that has even been noticed by especially my youngest child. He said, Mama, when we're in Italy, it's like you're different. You're like home. So it's more like how I think I behave and how I maybe relax.
Interesting. So, Liv, tell me a little bit about the oil and gas business of DNV. Basically, DNV comes, as far as I understand, and this is very simplified, from a naval tradition or maritime tradition of Norway. At some point, about 150 years ago, we needed collective insurance between our ships, and then also we needed to make sure that the ships are, good enough for the jobs that they were supposed to be doing. So the certification business started. And then as ships evolved into different classes, this certification got more and more complex. And so, what does certification really have to do with oil and gas?
You're absolutely right. That's how DNV started in the maritime. And then when oil and gas was discovered in the North Sea, there was a lot of maritime industrial players that moved into oil and gas. It was, also the ones with the boats, the fishing vessels. So it's really about the competence that we need is also needed in oil and gas, and
the
to
whole
kind of
supply chain.
The whole supply chain kind of shifted over, and we see the same now, right? That the whole oil and gas supply chain shifts over towards renewables or offshore aquaculture, because it's the same competence. Some of it is the same, and for especially DNV's services, it's really about hydrodynamics, forces from the wave. It's about having strong enough structures. It's about having safety systems, safety barriers. So in case something goes wrong, it doesn't lead to a catastrophe. So all that systematic thinking is the same. But then, of course, you had to add on additional competencies, because it is different to kind of pump up oil and gas from the earth than to transport a ship from A to B. But that is kind of enriching. So I think. And now that I move into new areas, I can think about what do I really know about health, except for having been in the hospital now and then, or a few times, of course. But I realize there is quite a lot to contribute it. First of all, of course, about how the people side, but then it's now a lot about using digital tools. It's a lot about sharing data, what hinders data sharing, how you build on the digital infrastructure. All that is quite similar. So often you have more to offer in a new setting than you maybe think when you start. That's an encouragement.
Exactly. I think that this transfer of knowledge between both different sectors of industry, but also within our own head, is something that is very underestimated. Personally, I remember when I came back to Norway for the second time. Basically, I came to Norway as an 18-year-old, studied here, worked here, and then went to Oxford for my PhD, then went to Silicon Valley, then went eventually to INSEAD for my MBA. I came back for like reasons. Basically, I also think that Norway is the best country in the world if you are, especially for women, but for any professional wanting to balance life with interesting work. And I remember people asking me, well, can't you make up your mind? You know, you studied technology and now you want to go into business. And I felt really almost ashamed of myself for, you know, kind of zigzagging career-wise. But I honestly think that that's what we need because the world has become so complex that by having all these perspectives, you can see the complexity more easily. And the way that you explained the transition from maritime to oil and gas in terms of certification is a great example of that. Because, of course, anyone who has seen an oil platform, and if you guys who are listening haven't, please look up a picture of a North Sea oil platform. These are incredibly complex setups, very, very advanced engineering that has to survive in a very hostile environment. They are supposed to be completely stable in waves up to 19 meters high. And all of this is happening with very advanced, both digital, but also mechanical systems. And I guess, you know, not just ensuring that it looks good, but that we help people define what good looks like.
Yes, setting the standard. Yeah,
interesting sustainability perspective, and that's what I'd like you to think about now. So, what does this work that you did in oil and gas have to do with sustainability?
Yes, you know, and that was the kind of the very, very challenging question when I took on the role, right? And I have thought so much about it because it's such an intellectual challenge, you know, to, support an oil and gas business or industry at the same time as you kind of truly believe in sustainability and are concerned about climate risk and know what the CO2 do to society or to the climate. And at the same time, also knowing that your own country relies on the income. So it's a really complex dilemma, and to try to sort this, because I'm a person driven by doing things that I believe is right. And then I think that it's a realization that looking around and traveling around to see how reliant the world is on oil and gas. And to kind of take that away in a snap will create chaos, and it will create instability, and it will create unsustainability in a different way. It could trigger a war, right? A war, it's not sustainable. So, you know, understanding how that all fits together, and then realizing that what we need to work with is to make sure that if there is an oil and gas industry, we have to make sure or help the industry, make it as environmentally friendly as possible, as safe as possible, and to utilize resources as efficiently as possible. So not too much steel, not too much energy, not too much transport in the production. At the same time, we needed to influence the industry to make better choices, and also influence governmental and decision maker to take informed choices and to invest in the new greener alternatives. And I think you've had Sverre Alvik here as well, discussing with him. And the Energy Transition Outlook is such a report where we try to kind of show how everything hangs together and show a way, towards a more sustainable future. Then, of course, in all this, we have to make money, right? So it is a really intellectual challenge to be in that mix, and super rewarding, and fantastic people, I must say, in that industry, and people that really want to do good thing for the world.
But when we support these large oil and gas related projects, our role is basically making sure that, and whether this is something in Texas or in Kuwait, that the construction is as safe and as environmentally friendly as possible.
Yes.
Stopping leakages, as you said, optimizing energy consumption, verifying, as high a quality of the product as possible. So there are quite a lot of incremental changes we can do to oil production to make it cleaner.
Yes, it is. And I think one of the big kind of potential now is going from the more mechanical analog world to do digital work using the digital tools and to be even more efficient and also reduce, for example, the need for traveling to do inspections. You can now do some of the surveys using remote technologies instead of doing, all the rerun of calculation and document reviews and all that. We can use more efficient tools and also save a lot of time and effort spent on something that can be spent on something else. So I think the industry is doing a lot to make themselves both greener but also more efficient, and by doing that also being an important part of the energy mix for many years ahead.
And safety, but also environmental sustainability. I think, we don't really think about it when we think about some of these largest industries of the world that DNV is helping keep safe. But I think what happened in the Suez Canal a couple of months ago, where 1/5 of the world's economy was suddenly, at risk, and
Yes.
This, as you said, also the kind of political consequences of some such thing, or the leakages that let's say BP had in the Mexican Sea some time ago. I think that we are simply come to a point where we have to do everything we can to stop such things from happening.
Yes. And that's, of course, a role where DNV see, as a very important role. It's big things like this. We also want to, we strive to avoid by working closely with our clients and stakeholders. So the big accidents and the small incremental changes in order to continuously improve, and also to then reveal the better alternatives as well. Yeah, but the Suez Canal is interesting. So avoiding such incidents is extremely important.
I would just like us to go very, very briefly through two topics, and then we'll go over to the accelerator. So the first one is about gas. We talk about oil and gas, and most of us can imagine, the value chain for oil. We think of a platform somewhere out in the sea, some huge pipes going down, oil being pumped up, being led through. And that's where it kind of stops for me. I don't know if it's really a tanker ship taking it to the port, or is it a pipeline taking it to the port? And from there on, it has its own kind of system. But how is gas different from this? Are there other really important things that can be looked at?
Gas is similar in the same way. I mean, it comes up from the ground, and then you either take it through pipes to the destination, or you put it on the ships through as a LNG. What we've seen, liquefied natural gas, and that technology has become much cheaper in the last years, which means that gas has been it's been more and more possible and economically viable to transport it as a liquid, which then opens up for much more freedom in that market. Because before that happened, almost all the gas was transported in big, huge pipelines. And then it becomes kind of a very part of almost the political system as well, because you have to really make these long contracts, selling gas from Norway to Europe or from Russia to Europe. If you build a pipe, it's there forever. You kind of commit yourself much more than if you do on the spot market or in the LNG market. So it's becoming actually more and more similar to the oil market, the gas market now, through the LNG technology. And you see also it's built less pipes.
Less pipes. And more flexible infrastructure.
More flexible,
so it's energy as a service in a way.
Yes, actually, in a way. Yes.
Yeah. And I also want to ask you about this digital twins idea, without us getting bogged down into any definitions. But you talked about digital services on oil platform. And in my head, it means, an oil platform with lots of sensors that can measure different kinds of production KPIs. And then we can also use that for predictive maintenance, for alerts, for inspections even. Can you just say a little bit what, is this reality? Is this that something that the oil industry is actively using?
Yeah, I think on the digital twin there are many levels, and you said also that an oil platform or an oil facility is very, very complex, and we know it's also very risky because if something goes wrong, it can explode and it can be a fire and all that. So there's a lot of documentation to ensure that things are the way they should be, and just keeping track of that documentation and keeping track of all the inspections and survey reports, it's a huge challenge. So one kind of the basic use of a digital twin would be to make sure that we know where everything is and which kind of asset or part of the structure it belongs to, and then it's possible to also have a up-to-date picture of the status of the facility. But then we see that more and more of the equipment on the platform is equipped with sensors, which means that we also can follow the condition of the system, and they can give alerts, and they can almost at some point tell to us that now I'm below standard, right? And then we have to go and exchange it. We're not quite there yet, but that we are going. But then the final more thing is if you then have a digital model of the asset with all the sensors and with the data, you could instead of watching the physical asset, you can watch a digital assets, which is much more convenient. And then you can go and do the maintenance and repairs as you talked about. I think we're not there yet, but I'm for sure that in many in parts of components, that's for sure coming very, very soon. So definitely a space to follow, and all the things and the technologies that goes into there can also then be applied for other industries as well, because they are generic.
Very interesting. So now, Liv, to the accelerator. What is the accelerator, and what do you want to do with it?
So the accelerator is put up in order for DNV to be able to quickly grow into areas where we don't have a strong foothold. We are, traditionally very strong in maritime, in energy systems, and also some of the industry where we have a good impact of management system certification activities. But there are certain areas that we see are growing of importance for society, and where we think that there will be need for an assurance provider. One of the big transformations we see is the digital transformation of the healthcare sector. So also in the healthcare sector, we see more and more trend toward data-driven decisions and more cloud-based solutions. There's need to share data. One patient, one journal system is a mantra from the government. How do we actually achieve that? With the new technology, and how do we ensure that the data is where it should be and only seen by those that need to going forward? So we think there is an assurance role there, and we see that in health. I mean, with the population that more people, more elderly people, the whole healthcare system will be strained going forward, and it's extremely important for society that those money are actually used. The money we spend on health are used, to treat patient, to have patient-centric solutions. So a lot of the digital transformation is about reducing waste in the first phase. Mm-hmm. So there we see that we have a role. So we are looking into, more 10-year perspective in building up that. And then another very important area for society, given all the digital transformations in all sectors, is the cyber threat. So how can we assure that our customers are well protected against cyber threats? That's a huge, huge thing, and an area that we feel that it's very natural for DNV to take a position there. And the accelerator has been given the task also to grow that sector as fast as we can.
So if we go back to health sector, I think we use this word assurance in DNV as if the whole world knows what it means. But really, it's, again, very simplified, making sure that the services are doing what they're supposed to do. And this is increasingly important and difficult in a time of, let's say, artificial intelligence. So digital assurance for health services might mean that the diagnostic tools of tomorrow work as they should, the communication systems are optimized. That, why do we want to use certification or quality assurance or digital assurance in health services? What would you say?
I think you are talking about that. If you know that your treatment is based on data from very many other patients or from other experiences or experiments, you really want to know that there is quality around these data, that the data are what they say they are, and that they have been qualified to do or to be used the way they should. And there we believe that to have an independent third-party provider to do that quality check could be of value, because the data can come from very many different sources. If it comes from only one source, it's kind of easy, but data is usually combined from very many mixes of sources, and also from different companies, different countries even. So that is one thing. And then you mentioned algorithm. How do we ensure that these algorithms actually are trained the right way and trained on the right data, and that they are actually what they do is what they are intended to? And as the health sector becomes more and more complex, we believe that people would like to know that these algorithms are assured by an independent party. So it's exactly these examples that we are looking into, how the future health care system will work in the future, but also protecting data, also protecting hospital from cyber attacks, making sure that when you give your sensitive healthcare data, that they don't arrive at the wrong screen or the wrong reception. So I think that public increasingly will ask for these kind of certificates or assurance services.
For me, this is a very important political question as well, Liv. And I recently wrote a book called Staten og datan, which means the state and the data in English. And I believe that the public sector has this responsibility towards all of us to, if everything, including our society, our health services, our welfare, and our politics is going to be supported by and driven by in the future data, then somebody needs to make sure that there is independence in that data. And what I'm worried about is that the only organizations capable of doing this at an integrator level, at a really large scale, let's say somebody who can understand not just the data of one hospital, but, the whole country, all the hospitals, all the providers, would be the large mega monopolies, either in Silicon Valley or China, because they have so much more experience in data and algorithms. And I believe that that independent, both politically and economically, parties like DNV are super important as a counterbalance to that kind of monopoly of future power. So how do you, the municipalities, the different parts of the country will, of course, have the necessary political freedom to choose the digital systems they want, but somebody needs to be able to connect them, and somebody needs to be able to ensure that, they are being used in the right way that they are regulated to be used for.
I think you're right. And if you look at how we operate in some of the other industry, like maritime, oil and gas, we're very close, to the regulator, to the governments as well. So we are in a way a bridge between the requirements set by the government's expectation from government and the people in society and the industry. So in a way, that bridge, that connector also is important that we don't forget. It's really there where we add value to be that bridge between the regulators and the one that then are operating in the sector. So I think that's needed also in healthcare.
And we talk about healthcare, but I think there is a transition opportunity to, not just Norway and healthcare, but actually all the world's healthcare, because many governments will need to ensure that kind of stable and transparent level of quality of their services. In a time where I think polarization is going to be stronger and stronger. So what we manage to do in one place, perhaps we can more easily spread to other countries given our international footprint.
Yes, and I think that is also a picture we see, and you talked about knowledge transfer, and I think this is exactly how it will happen. Maybe it will develop now in the more digitized countries, such like the Nordics, but definitely something that we then can bring out through our international network, and also try to influence other countries to do the right choices.
So I just want us towards the end to reflect a little bit on different kinds of sustainability, because when we talked about oil and gas, we talked a lot about climate and energy efficiency and less steel and things that people generally associate with the sustainability. I personally believe there are 3 colors. There are really 17 on the UN circle. But there is green. That's the ecology, nature, water quality, etc. But there is also red and blue. And the red one is society and equality and respect and decent work and so on. And the blue I think of is as necessary innovation to stay in the game and have some management ability. And, what we talk about here, it's not so much perhaps the green kind, but it's very much the red and the blue kind of sustainability.
Yeah, for the technology, you mean that is helping this sustainability on the blue side?
No, I'm thinking in terms of red sustainability, so social sustainability. What you are providing is in many ways ensuring equal access to services, and both countrywide, but perhaps internationally. And I think this is going to be a very important question going forward. Who gets access to what kind of health services? And then on the blue side, it's helping innovation so that it's not only the largest IT companies in the world that also will control health, but basically the traditional providers.
Yes, I think it helps both the blue and the red, as you say. And I sometimes find it hard to kind of separate, because I see on the blue side you would think that that's where you make the money in a way, but I think you're not given the license to operate, or you're not given, you don't get customers to buy your products, all these things, if you don't also solve the red part. So increasingly people we see from a product that you actually cover both the green, red and the blue. Otherwise they will not buy the product. And there is technology available now, that you can actually scan in the shop the product you tend to buy, and then you can get to trace for everything that builds into that product, and you can see where it comes from, where it's produced, and then you can assess, the green, red and blue. So it's not only the price before you purchase. So I think that's extremely valuable, because I think that, the ultimate influencer of the direction the world is going is the consumer, it is the voter, and it is the people. So we have to make sure that we can use that power in a way that we want the world to go.
I think that's a great way to conclude on what we were talking about, Liv. In your kind of final statement, do you have some sort of an advice to young people who think that sustainability is important but don't know what business direction to take it into? What would you advise? How do you work with sustainability?
Yeah, I think sustainability will be important in all sector going forward. So I think in the old days you kind of choose to become this or that. I think now you have to have a conscious, picture of where that takes you, regardless of what sector. Now, if advice to young people, I think the best advice is, almost any theme that you engage in and spend time on and learn to understand becomes interesting. So I think that investing in knowledge, being curious, finding out how things work, will make you be interested in almost anything that you engage with.
Liv, thank you so much for joining us here in Learn for an interesting and an educational conversation.
Thank you, Silvija. It was very nice to speak with you.